I had my dad, who was originally from the Philippines, arrived here in 1946, and actually he arrived in Hawaii and stayed in Hawaii and worked, and then came here to California. And he worked in the fields, much like most of the Filipinos back then, as well as the Mexicans. And so he worked in the lettuce, and he worked in his lettuce all his life until he was probably 64, which is very, very hard work. And he raised five of us. Our mom they were divorced, and she moved back to Mexico, and so our dad raised five of us, and all of us really worked in the fields. Everybody had a job. I used to work in the berries, string beans. As I got older, I graduated to the lettuce. My brothers and sisters worked in the roses and the chives and the berries. So we all grew up working in the fields, and we had to earn our money to buy our own school clothes. And and I went to the local schools here, and I ended up graduating from Watsonville before I was drafted in the military. Well, I didn't have a choice to go into the war. Back then, everybody was being drafted to go into the military, and so uh, I didn't go to school, much like much of our friends didn't go to school after high school, because we knew that we were going to be drafted. So we just sort of waited, and then I was drafted at 19, about 6 months out of high school, and I really didn't have a choice. I was drafted. Many young men out of Wattsville were being drafted, and we had six of us that all went in together. And not that we went together, we were drafted together. And so I had no choice to go. Obviously, you have choices. You can not go, or you can go, and that was it. And some people went to Canada, very, very few, but everybody else decided to go into the military. And some people joined the military. Some would join the Air Force, the Navy, would join so that they would not end up in the infantry, as myself and as well as one of my friends. And that's really what you dreaded, was to end up in the infantry into the jungles of Vietnam. We didn't realize how bad it was until later on. Well, I was 19, turned 21 over there. Um, I ended up in Central Highlands for the 4th Division. It's in mountains, and I ended up in a mechanized unit for a short time, and I decided to join the Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol, which is short for LRPS, and eventually became a ranger. My dad, he never really said much, not at all. And family members, it was just all a part of life. We stayed in touch a little bit, but not much. Uh, but I was in contact with him. My father, I never received any letters. He never really talked to me at all. He was a real quiet man. Going to the basic training in Fort Lewis, Washington, and then from Fort Lewis, Washington, uh, once we graduated, they give you your jobs. And obviously, I wanted to be something other than an infantryman, but I didn't have much of a choice. And when I graduated out of the basic training, was put into advanced training, which was an infantry training. And I spent there infantry until I was selected to go to the non-commissioned officer school in Fort Benning, Georgia, which I spent another 12 weeks there before coming back to Fort Ord and helping train troops. And then once that was done, then my tour was going to start in Vietnam. And it was all basic training. The advanced non-commissioned officer training was very good in the fact that it reinforced the basic infantry training, so I had a little bit more knowledge. But when I arrived there, most training was on-the-job training. Because here then, you were training conventional warfare, not jungle warfare. So you were training conventional warfare, then when you got there, you received your jungle training. I spent about a month and a half with a mechanized unit when I decided to join the long range reconnaissance, and that I received on the job training as well, and eventually went to Recondo school and went into the Rangers. The day like there is really, once you come back from a mission, you're given at least 3 or 4 days to stand down and relax. And we would go to town and shop and do various things and party. But then when we get the alert for a mission, then we prepare. We get together with. I was just one of the infantrymen. Eventually, I became an assistant team leader. When I became assistant team leader, I got together with the team leader. We would get the mission. We determine what we need. I would fly with him, and we'd go out in the visual reconnaissance of the area that we were in, and then we would come back and determine how much ammo to carry, how much food. We mapped all the trails. We set up all the artillery pre-coordinates and so forth. Base camp, and we were located. I was with the 2nd Brigade LRPS, which was out of a city called Kontum and Camp Mary Lou, and it was tents. Slept in a cot, sandbags around the tent, lots of rats everywhere. So you slept high up. Job was to find the enemy and observe, and at times go out on missions where we would ambush them. And an ambush would be, we would find a trail that was heavily used. We would find that trail. We would set up our ambush of 4 guys. We set up with these devices called Claymore mines, and we would wait for them to come and ambush them. Or sometimes we would try to do a POW snatch. So the mission could vary. Also could vary in a bomb estimate. And if there was bombing and artillery, you would estimate what the kind of damage there was. At first, it was very scary, very, very scary. But believe it or not, it was very exhilarating. To fly out into enemy territory with 4 men deep behind enemy lines was very exhilarating at times until you got in contact, and it became very scary. Sometimes you'd be chased through the jungle trying to get away from the enemy. You got gunships coming in, rolling in, shooting for you in cover till you make it to the landing zone. They pick you up and you go. So there's a lot of things that can happen to you. We've been ambushed before. We've been compromised before. We've been compromised in the middle of the night where we had to leave, walk in the dark to get away from them because they were trailing us. We've been trailed when we were inserted, where they trailed us for several days, snuck up on us and tried to ambush us, and where gunships would come in, artillery would be shooting cover. So there'd be lots of rockets, lots of bullets being shot. We'd be throwing hand grenades, shooting, and then breaking contact and making it to the helicopter, running and jumping and getting in. Yes, I have one. I never wanted him to go. I never wanted him to experience some of the things that I might experience, and he never did go. So I mean, and all, even friends of mine that have siblings, never really wanted them to go, because they didn't want them to experience what they have gone through. And I wouldn't want my son to do that. I mean, yes, I was, I grew up fast there. Yes, I could take care of myself, but I wouldn't want my son to go to war. Retired. I worked as a firefighter for 35 years. Retired in '07. I stay pretty busy. My wife still works a little bit. She's gonna be retiring soon, but I stay busy by having a small boxing gym and training boxers and training mixed martial arts people. So I stay busy pretty much every day, and as well as at home. I don't work right now, so.